I never imagined that my own son, my sweet, innocent little boy, the one I cradled in my arms, would ever raise his hand against me. It was late afternoon, and I was trimming dead leaves from my rose bushes, the sun warming my back. Mark stood behind me, arms crossed like he always did when he was about to say something he knew I wouldn't like. Chloe hovered nearby, silent but watching, like she was waiting for a show to begin. He didn't ease into it, just came right out and said it. "You need to sign over the house, Mom. It's time. Chloe just graduated, and she needs somewhere stable while she gets on her feet." I remember blinking at him, still crouched by the rosebush. My gloves were dirty, shears still in my hand. "Sign over the house?" I repeated, like I hadn't heard him right. But I had. I just couldn't believe it. He didn't flinch. "Yes, it makes sense. You don't need all this space. And Chloe can help take care of things. It's not about pushing you out. It's about planning ahead. For her future." I looked at Chloe then. She didn't look away. Her eyes were calm, entitled. That soft sweetness I used to see in her. Gone. Replaced with something colder. She actually nodded, like this had already been decided. And I understood. This wasn't a request. It was a performance. A cornered push. They'd already planned everything. Maybe even told friends. I stood up slowly, pulling the gloves from my hands one finger at a time. My heart wasn't racing. It wasn't breaking either. It was settling, sinking into a kind of cold that only comes when someone you love lays their cards down. And there's not a single one with your name on it. "I'm not signing anything today," I said. Calm, direct, not angry, just firm. Mark's face changed then. It twisted. His eyes narrowed and his jaw clenched, and without warning, without hesitation, his hand struck the side of my face. It wasn't hard enough to knock me down, but it was hard enough to ring in my ears and make my knees tremble. A hot, shameful sting bloomed on my cheek. I didn't raise a hand to it, didn't gasp or yell. I just looked at him. "You hit me," I said, not to accuse him, just to make sure we both knew what had happened. His breathing was loud. Chloe said nothing. She looked uncomfortable now, like maybe things had gone a bit off script. "I'm sorry," Mark said, too fast. "But you're being difficult. You're not listening. You don't understand how hard this is for Chloe." That's when I knew it had never been about me. Not really, I was just an obstacle. A barrier between them and the thing they wanted. My house. I nodded slowly, eyes still on him. I think that scared him more than if I'd screamed. "Okay," I said softly. His shoulders relaxed. "So you'll do it?" I said okay, I repeated, quieter this time. Then I bent down and picked up my gloves, dusted the petals off my knees, and walked back inside. I didn't slam the door. I didn't cry. I just went into the bathroom, looked at the red print on my face in the mirror, and blinked. I didn't feel broken. I felt something else. I felt ready. If they thought I was going to disappear quietly, they didn't know me at all. They thought my silence was surrender. But quiet doesn't mean weak. And being alone doesn't mean I'm done. No. That was just the moment everything started. The last thing Mark ever said to me that sounded kind was, "Mom, let me help. You don't need to do this all alone anymore." It was right after his divorce. He showed up with 2 suitcases, a crooked smile, and eyes so tired they looked almost genuine. Chloe stayed with her mother at first, so it was just the 2 of us. We shared meals, watched the news in silence. I even made his favorite casserole, thinking maybe the pain of his broken marriage had softened him. I wanted to believe he came home because he missed me, because he remembered the version of me who held his hand through every scraped knee, every heartbreak, every mistake. But no, he came back with a plan. It started small, quiet, almost invisible at first. I remember standing at the sink, rinsing out a dish when he said, "You should let me handle the bills, Mom. You've earned some rest." I laughed. "I've been managing the house for 40 years, Mark. I think I can still balance a checkbook." He smiled. "I know, but things are different now. Digital. You shouldn't have to stress over online payments and scams. I'll take care of it. One less thing for you to worry about." It sounded reasonable, almost sweet. So I handed over the login information. Then came the credit card offers to build points, the insurance policy adjustments for better coverage, the cell phone plan upgrade, because your flip phone is ancient. Each decision made without me. Every paper trail routed through him. And then Chloe moved in. She came in like a breeze. Light, polite, full of thank yous and compliments. She called me Grams and baked muffins on weekends. For the first month, I almost forgot what she was really doing there, until I heard her on the phone one night, laughing. "It's practically already mine," she said. "She's just too soft to fight." That was the night I started keeping the notebook, every bank change, every piece of mail Mark redirected, every accidental login update, every time Chloe brought her friends over and introduced them like it was her home. I didn't say a word. I didn't argue or yell. I just took notes, and I tended to my roses every morning, clipping dead petals, turning soil, pretending not to hear them whispering about renovations or open-concept kitchens. Some days I wondered if I was being paranoid, if maybe I was just a bitter old woman, misreading intentions. But then I overheard Chloe thank Mark for making sure she'd be set up for life, and when I walked into the room, they both went quiet. Mark turned to me and said, "Hey Mom, why don't you take it easy this week? We've got everything handled." Like I was a guest. Not the owner of the house. Not the woman who'd sacrificed decades for this family. I nodded and went back outside, dug my hands into the soil. Let the dirt fill my nails. That was the day I decided to look up the property deed. I needed to know exactly what my husband left behind and what they might have overlooked. Because Chloe may have seen me as a weak old woman, and Mark might have thought I was too tired to fight back. But they were both wrong. I wasn't broken, I was patient. And I wasn't going to lose my home. Not to the boy I raised, and not to the girl who called my life a placeholder. Mark thought he had already won. Chloe walked around the house like it was hers, and I was just the help. But I wasn't playing their game. I was documenting it. 3 weeks after the slap, I went down to the town clerk's office. I told no one. Didn't even mention it when I saw Mark that morning pouring himself coffee from my pot without asking. The clerk's name was James. Young, polite, with thick glasses and the kind of smile that looked like he still lived with his mother. I told him I needed to review the property records for my home. "Of course," he said, pulling up the digital records. "What specifically are you looking for?" "My husband left the deed to me when he passed," I said, "but I want to review the original title, just to be sure." "Most people don't go that far back," James said, half smiling. "I'm not most people." He raised an eyebrow, then printed out a few documents and slid them across the desk. "This is the latest revision on record. Sole ownership in your name since 2009. But," he pulled another file from a manila folder. "This here's the original deed from 1987. That what you want?" I nodded and took out my reading glasses. It was there, in the fine print, right where Clifford had told me years ago. Any transfer of ownership must carry mutual agreement from both original marital owners or their legally appointed successors. Otherwise, the deed is to be held in trust under the surviving spouse until death or voluntary relinquishment. In other words, Clifford had locked it. Unless I signed it over, fully, willingly, and legally, they couldn't do a thing. I traced the edge of the paper with my finger. That old goat. He always said I was too trusting, too quick to sign, too polite. "You don't give away your ground," he'd said once. "Not even to the ones you love. Especially not them." I thanked James and folded the document carefully into my purse. "Out of curiosity," I asked casually, "could someone take action on the house without my knowledge?" "Only if you granted them full power of attorney," James replied. I smiled gently. "And if I didn't? Then nothing they sign matters." That night, I made 3 copies of that clause. One went into my notebook, one into the safe, and one into a folder labeled simply, "If they push me." I didn't say a word to Mark. Let him keep pretending he was in charge. Didn't mention it when Chloe thanked me that weekend for making the right decision. She hugged me lightly, like she was already rehearsing being the new lady of the house. That same night, she posted a photo of her new room on social media. I saw it. Hardwood floors, my mother's rocking chair in the corner, a caption that read, "Can't believe it's finally happening. Thank you, Grams, 2 hearts," and I just nodded. Let them keep thinking the ink was dry. Let them keep redecorating my life in their heads. Because the more they underestimated me, the more power I held. I was quiet, yes, but I wasn't sleeping. They wanted the house? They'd have to take it from my cold, documented, claws-locked hands. The very next week, I put on my nicest cardigan and walked into the bank like any polite, aging woman might. Calm, slow, forgettable. Mark had always insisted on streamlining things. His word, not mine. He told me he'd set up a few accounts, just in case, so I wouldn't have to bother with bills or statements anymore. I let him think he was managing the castle. What he didn't know was that I kept a notebook of every change, account numbers, missing statements, strange new charges labeled family expense. So that morning, I walked up to Linda at the bank. We'd known each other since the town had a Dairy Queen and a video rental store. "Linda, can you help me with something?" I asked with a soft smile. "There's a transfer I don't quite understand." She welcomed me with that same gentle voice she always had for older customers. I handed her a printout from my online banking, an account I had reopened under a different name months earlier. A backup. Linda scanned the printout, her expression sharpening. These withdrawals, they're being routed into a shared account." "Oh?" I said, blinking innocently. "Is that what that form was?" I remember Mark had me sign something about emergency access. I didn't read all the fine print. You know how it is. Linda looked at me more carefully then. "This form gave him full transfer rights. This isn't emergency access, it's financial authority." I tilted my head. "Is that so?" "Yes, ma'am. And this account is attached to a larger holding you don't appear to be listed on anymore." Now that I already knew. But I feigned surprise so well, even Linda paused. I leaned in like I was sharing a secret. "I suppose that's what I get for being too trusting." Clifford would be rolling in his grave. Linda glanced around, then lowered her voice. "Mrs. Halloway, do you want me to flag this activity? Quietly." My smile didn't reach my eyes. "If it's not too much trouble, Linda, let's not startle anyone just yet. I'd like to stay a step ahead." She nodded, printed out a summary of recent transfers, and handed it to me in an unmarked envelope. "If anything else comes up, call me directly." Not the help desk. As I walked out of that bank, envelope tucked neatly under my arm, I felt taller than I had in years. I was still the same Evelyn, quiet, polite, mild, but now I was carrying ammunition. Back home, Mark was in the living room scrolling through home decor websites. Chloe was upstairs, blasting music, her friends giggling like they were at a sleepover in a house they'd bought. Mark looked up. "You were out for a while." "Just a walk. Beautiful day," I replied. He went back to scrolling. Didn't even notice the envelope in my hand. That night, Chloe walked right past me, without a hello, her phone raised like she was giving her followers a tour. "This is the main hallway," she narrated. "We're gonna repaint all of this. Bright, clean whites. You know, modern but cozy. Not we're moving in. Not my grandmother's house. Just, this is the hallway." Like I was already gone. She didn't see me standing in the kitchen. Or maybe she did and thought I didn't matter. But I was there, watching, listening, and writing it all down. By the second weekend of May, Chloe had turned my home into her showroom. She stopped knocking on doors, stopped asking if it was okay to have people over. They just started appearing, friends in cropped jackets and high-waisted jeans, walking through my hallway like they were appraising it for resale. "This room has great light," one of them said, spinning in what used to be the study Clifford built with his own hands. "Totally could be a wellness nook." "Wellness nook," I whispered under my breath, as I stood behind the half-open kitchen door, unnoticed. "And Chloe?" She beamed like she was queen of the estate. "We're thinking about adding a skylight here, maybe gutting the kitchen next." We. Not a single mention of me. That night, after the last pair of boots clomped out the door, Chloe passed me in the hallway. She didn't even meet my eyes. I murmured, "Good night, sweetheart." She didn't answer, just walked right past. I stood there, in my own slippers, the ones with the fraying heel, and felt a familiar emptiness. The same kind I'd felt when I buried Clifford. The kind where people stop seeing you, but keep using your warmth like it belongs to them. The next morning, I added it to the notebook. Date, May 11th time. 10:47 a.m. event. 4 girls, none introduced. Walked through study, dining room, and upstairs. Chloe described house as ours. No acknowledgement of presence. It kept happening. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturday brunches. Brunches that left my silver trays in the sink with dried egg yolk crusted like some kind of insult. She walked past me as if I were a fixture. Like a coat rack, or one of those old doilies people forget they're still using. I didn't argue. I didn't protest. I just documented. And I tended to my roses. Because something strange happens when people think you're harmless. They start showing their teeth. Mark had become more distant too, only popping out of his room when he wanted to use the oven or brag about how many likes Chloe's latest post had gotten. "She's building a following," he said one night, tapping on his phone. "Everyone loves her design sense." "Lovely," I said, stirring my tea. He never asked where I went during the day. Never noticed the papers tucked into my knitting basket, or the folder marked recipes that didn't contain a single one. And why would he? To them, I was fading. Outdated. Kind of sweet, but sort of useless. They forgot who built this house alongside Clifford. They forgot who patched the roof when it leaked during the storm of '99. Who hosted the women's auxiliary lunches here for 23 years. Who buried a dog and a husband in this yard and still got up every morning to prune the roses like faith alone could keep something alive. They forgot. But I didn't. And every whisper behind closed doors, every empty goodnight, every plate left crusted in the sink, it was all going into the record. Because I wasn't going to fight them with noise. I was going to fight them with proof, the kind that holds up in court, the kind that comes with a clause and a timestamp. I came home from the grocery store with 2 bags, one with Chloe's favorite almond milk because I was still pretending, and the other with the cheapest bouquet I could find. Something about fresh flowers made the kitchen feel less hollow. But my key didn't fit. I jiggled it once, twice, and then froze. The doorknob turned, but only halfway. Stopped hard, cold, unwelcome. I knocked gently. No answer. Knocked again. Louder this time. Finally, Mark opened the door, phone in hand, clearly annoyed. "Oh, you're back already?" "Already?" I asked, looking down at my bags. I was gone for 30 minutes. He stepped aside, barely giving me room to enter. I noticed the hardware immediately. New brushed nickel locks, freshly screwed in. "You changed the locks?" I said calmly. He shrugged. "It's for security. With Chloe moving more of her stuff in, we need to be cautious. You know how crime's been going up around here." I stared at him, stunned by how easily the lie rolled off his tongue. "But you didn't tell me." "I figured it was easier this way. I'll get you a copy of the new key. Eventually. Eventually." As if this wasn't my home. As if I was a tenant overstaying a silent lease. "Chloe's got people coming over later," he added, already turning back to his phone. "Try not to be underfoot." Underfoot. That word clung to me all the way to my room. I closed the door behind me, locked it, and stared at the dresser Clifford built for me on our 10th anniversary. My fingers found the tiny notch on the back panel, the one where I kept things I didn't want just anyone to find. I pulled out the folder. My notes. My copy of the deed clause. The flagged bank documents. Everything Linda had printed and quietly stamped. And I placed it all inside my suitcase. Not because I was giving up, but because I knew it was time to leave. If I stayed one more night under their roof, it wouldn't be a plan anymore. It would become resentment. Fire. Something messy and loud. And that was their game. Not mine. I texted Louisa, my cousin on my mother's side. We'd never been particularly close, but she'd always said, "If you ever need space, my place is yours." I wrote, "Louisa, is that offer still good?" Just for a little while. She replied 2 minutes later, "Come whenever you want. You have a room, a garden, and a lock only you control." That night, I packed a single bag, my documents, my notebook, one cardigan, my gardening gloves. I didn't tell Mark, didn't tell Chloe. I just left a note on the fridge, out for a few days. Don't wait up. And I walked out the back door before sunrise. The same back door Clifford used every morning for 35 years. Whistling off to work, I whispered goodbye to the roses. They were blooming, wild and defiant. Louisa's place smelled like basil and old books. Her guest room had lilac sheets and a window that looked out over a row of hydrangeas. "You okay?" she asked gently, placing a cup of tea beside me. I nodded. "I think I finally am. Because sometimes stepping away isn't surrender. It's just part of the setup." Louisa's kitchen was quiet that morning. Just the clink of my teacup and the steady rhythm of her dog's nails tapping across the tile. She didn't ask many questions. Just handed me her Wi-Fi password and a small stack of shortbread cookies like it was nothing. But what I was about to do wasn't nothing. I opened my laptop, found the number my friend Darlene had given me, a lawyer she swore by after her son tried to forge her car title, and made the call. "Evelyn Holloway," I said when the receptionist answered. "I'm calling about a possible case of elder abuse and property manipulation. I've documented everything." They scheduled me for the next day. I didn't tell Louisa until the morning of. She just handed me the keys to her car and said, "Bring me back a victory or a croissant." I brought both. His name was Mitchell Greer, mid-50s. Direct. No nonsense. No fake sympathy. Just facts. I handed him the envelope of documentation, watched him skim through the bank printouts, the deed clause, the journal entries, the notarized transfers Linda had quietly flagged. "Miss Holloway," he said, setting the folder down carefully, "this is strong. Stronger than most cases that go to trial." "Do I have a chance?" I asked calmly. Not with fear, just clarity. He looked me dead in the eye. "You don't just have a chance, you have leverage." It took 1 week, 7 days. 7 silent, peaceful days, where I watered Louisa's plants, read 3 whole mystery novels, and pretended I didn't have a storm brewing behind me. And then the papers were filed. An injunction, temporary but binding, on the property deed, based on documented financial manipulation, unauthorized transfers, and suspected elder coercion. The court froze the deed, meaning nothing could be sold, signed, or transferred. No remodeling, no refinancing, no new locks, no new ownership. The house wasn't just mine again, it was legally untouchable. Mark didn't know yet, but he would. I didn't even tell him. I let the county mail it. 3 days later, Louisa found me in the garden, trimming her lavender. She handed me her phone. "It's Mark," I answered. "Mom," he said, no hello. "What the hell is this letter from the county?" I kept my tone even. "What letter?" "About the deed. It says it's under injunction, that I'm under investigation for unauthorized financial activity. You filed this?" "I did," I said softly, "to protect myself." "You're blowing this out of proportion." "No," I said. "I'm correcting it." He was silent. I pictured him standing in the kitchen, probably with Chloe hovering nearby, trying to process that the home they'd been treating like theirs had just been barricaded. By law. "You don't understand, Mom," he finally muttered. "Chloe's already planned to move her stuff in. She posted pictures. What are we supposed to tell people?" "Tell them the truth," I said, voice steady. "Tell them you forgot who owned the house." I could hear him exhale, frustrated. I could hear the panic setting in. But I didn't flinch. Not anymore. That night, Louisa opened a bottle of wine. We toasted to boundaries, to resilience, and to judges who still believed in paper trails. Because quiet doesn't mean passive, and being underestimated doesn't mean unprepared. It was a Saturday morning. Clear skies, birds chirping. Louisa had just pulled muffins from the oven when her phone buzzed. She handed it to me without a word. "Chloe posted," she said simply. I opened the app, and there it was. A picture of a giant moving van parked in front of my house. The caption read, "Can't believe it's finally happening. 2 hearts, #first home, #blessed, #next chapter." I almost laughed. The comments were pouring in. OMG, congrats. Love the porch. So vintage. You guys totally deserve this. She was smiling in the photo, standing beside the truck like she'd bought the place outright. One hand on her hip, the other holding an iced coffee. That same smug, soft pink lip gloss smile she always wore when she thought she'd won. I didn't comment, didn't message. I just waited, because I already knew what was waiting for her. On the front gate, neatly taped in a plastic sleeve, laminated for weather, was a letter. One she didn't expect, one she'd never forget. I had drafted it with Mitchell, carefully, precisely. No emotion, just facts. To whom it may concern, this property is currently under legal injunction as filed with the county recorder's office on insert date. No items may be moved onto, stored within, or altered on the premises until resolution. Unauthorized entry or possession will be considered trespassing. Documentation enclosed. E. Holloway. I didn't see it happen in person, but Louisa's neighbor across the street, Joanne, bless her gossip-loving soul, texted me pictures. First one. Chloe stepping out of the van, box in hand, wearing yoga pants and a smug expression. Second one. Chloe frozen at the gate, reading the letter, her mouth slightly open. Third. Her phone pressed to her ear, pacing the sidewalk, Mark nowhere in sight. Fourth. Chloe's friends starting to drift away. Fifth. The moving van pulling out of the driveway, still full. I stared at the photos in silence. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't flutter. I felt nothing. No vindication, no cruelty, just clarity. Louisa peered over my shoulder. Guess she got the message. She got a message, I said, sipping my tea. The real one's still coming, because Chloe didn't know the full extent of what was happening. Not yet. She didn't know about the flagged bank activity. The power of attorney Mark thought he had, but legally never did. She didn't know the county had copies of everything. All she knew was she couldn't get inside. And Mark? Mark wasn't picking up her calls. I got the voicemail by accident. Chloe must have dialed my number thinking it was his. It lasted 4 seconds. Mark, what the hell is this? Why didn't you tell me she did something legal? You said it was handled. Call me back. Now. I saved it. Filed it next to the others. I didn't return the call. That night, I opened my notebook again, tucked the printed photos behind the bank forms, added a new entry. Date, Saturday event. Chloe attempted to move in. Legal notice prevented access. Van left full. No confrontation, no warning issued. Just truth, just facts, just boundaries backed by paper. 2 days after Chloe's moving van slunk away in reverse, my phone rang. Blocked number. I knew it was him. I let it go to voicemail. Waited an hour. Then listened. Mark's voice was tight, controlled, like someone trying not to yell through clenched teeth. Mom, we need to talk. Chloe's upset. We're both upset. What you're doing is unnecessary, and it's going to force me to pursue legal options. Call me back. Before it gets worse. Before it gets worse. That was rich. Coming from a man who changed the locks on his mother without warning. Still, I called him back. I wanted him to hear the calm in my voice. I wanted him to realize he'd built this house of cards on wet sand. He answered on the first ring. Finally. I heard your message, I said simply. You left us no choice. Chloe's been humiliated. Chloe humiliated herself, I cut in, by announcing a victory she hadn't earned. Mark paused. I imagined him pacing the kitchen, phone pressed to one ear, jaw locked. You filed an injunction, he said slowly, like the words hurt to admit. A real one. I spoke to a lawyer this morning. He said you can't do that unless you prove abuse. I did. What abuse? He snapped. We were trying to help you. You hit me, Mark. Silence. It hung there like smoke. I barely touched you, he stammered. That wasn't abuse. That was fear, I said, my voice still steady. That I wouldn't sign. That you'd lose your little plan. You don't know what you're talking about. I've been managing everything, keeping this place from falling apart. You're not well, Mom. You've been confused. I almost smiled. There it was. The gaslight. The same one he'd been trying to light for months. "You mean the form you had me sign last fall?" I asked. "The one you called a precaution?" "Yes," he said quickly. "The power of attorney. That's why this whole thing is ridiculous. You gave me authority." I stood up from the kitchen stool, walked to Louisa's hall table, and pulled out a document Mitchell had mailed me last week. "I requested a certified copy from the courthouse," I said softly. "The form you submitted was missing the second signature line. No witness, no notary, no legal standing." I heard it then. The shift. Mark stopped pacing, stopped arguing. "You never had authority," I continued. "Every transaction you made in my name, every family expense you paid out of my account, fraud. Every document you signed regarding the house, void." He didn't speak. I could hear Chloe in the background asking, "What? What is she saying?" Mark muttered something, muffled. Then back to me. "You wouldn't." "I already have." I let that hang there. Not as a threat, just a fact. "I don't want revenge," I said, "but I will have protection. I have every document, every message, every date and dollar. And now the court does too." "You're blowing this up." "No, Mark. You did. When you raised your hand. When you changed the locks. When you let her walk through my home like I was already dead." More silence. Then, finally, his voice lowered to a whisper. "What do you want?" I looked out the window at Louisa's lilacs. "I want you out of my house. Legally. Permanently. No access. No claims. No tricks." He didn't fight. He didn't argue. Because he finally knew. He had underestimated the one thing he should have feared most. A quiet woman with paperwork. They say paper cuts hurt the worst because you never see them coming. That was the kind of letter I sent. No threats. No apologies. Just facts. Laid out. Line by line. Like a scalpel carving open every lie they thought they'd buried. I mailed it certified. One envelope to Mark. One to Chloe. And one, already in the hands of Adult Protective Services, flagged by my lawyer as part of an ongoing investigation into elder financial abuse. Inside, I included bank records, side-by-side comparisons of my original statements, and the unauthorized transfers Mark made under family maintenance. Power of attorney forms, highlighted to show his version was incomplete, invalid, and never filed properly. Screenshots, Chloe's social media posts referring to our new house, posted before any transfer had occurred. Photos of the locks changed. Of the renovation sketches Chloe left on the counter, with her name scribbled over my floor plans. A timeline, dated and annotated from the first week he moved back in. Every decision he made, every document he intercepted. Every morning I found myself ignored in my own kitchen. I ended it with one paragraph. "You didn't just attempt to steal property. You tried to erase a person. This house was not an asset. It was a life. My life. Built over 40 years. With my hands. With my late husband's tools. You turned that legacy into leverage, and now you'll live with the consequences of underestimating the wrong woman." When the delivery confirmation pinged, I pictured them sitting side by side at the kitchen table, that smug porch they claimed as their own, now shaded by legal clouds they never saw forming. I didn't get a call that day, but Chloe took her Instagram private, and Mark stopped showing up at his job, according to Louisa's hairdresser's cousin, who worked front desk at the dealership where he pushed leased cars onto people who trusted too easily. The next afternoon, Louisa handed me her phone. Voicemail. "It's him." I played it on speaker. "Mom, we got the letter. I'm not sure how you could do this to us." To Chloe. She's in tears. "You've blindsided us with accusations that aren't fair. If there's anything we've done wrong, it wasn't intentional. Please, let's just talk. Can we talk?" There was no apology in his voice, just fear, just self-preservation. They weren't sorry for what they did. They were sorry it didn't work. I didn't return the call. Instead, I sent a second letter. This time to Mitchell, my lawyer. Subject: documentation enclosed. Request for police presence during re-entry to property. He didn't even hesitate. Called me within the hour. They won't be able to spin their way out of this, he said. But if you're going back to the house, I'll have an officer meet you there. Good, I said. It's time I reclaimed my garden. Because it wasn't just about the bricks or the deed. It was about the years they tried to erase with entitlement and manipulation. The kitchen, where I made birthday cakes. The porch Clifford painted 3 times, just to match my favorite summer blue. The hallway Chloe called outdated, where my son took his first steps. This wasn't revenge. It was return. It was 9:02 a.m. on a Tuesday when I stepped onto my own front lawn, flanked by my attorney and a quiet, firm officer named Simmons. The roses were still blooming. Chloe's car was in the driveway, parked crooked, like it belonged there. A few other vehicles lined the curb, none I recognized. The kind of sleek, expensive sedans 20-somethings lease for image but can't really afford. The front door was wide open. Voices carried out young, careless laughter, bass thudding low, a voice echoing. I can totally see the fireplace being torn out and replaced with tile. Torn out. I felt the warmth in my gut harden. Simmons gave me a small nod. Ready? I didn't answer. I just started walking. Inside, 3 of Chloe's friends were lounging in my living room. One of them had her boots up on Clifford's coffee table. Another had a measuring tape extended across the entryway. Chloe turned around first, a coffee mug in her hand and confusion blooming fast across her face. Grams? That word didn't fit in her mouth anymore. Behind me, Mitchell calmly handed a sealed packet to Officer Simmons, who stepped forward and cleared his throat. I'm Officer Simmons, here on behalf of Ms. Evelyn Holloway. This residence is under legal injunction. Ms. Holloway has been granted temporary sole authority pending final court proceedings. You are all required to vacate the premises immediately. The girl with the measuring tape blinked. Wait, what? Chloe's mug clinked against the counter. You can't just... This is a misunderstanding. Mark appeared in the hallway then, disheveled, barefoot. His eyes locked onto the officer's badge and widened. Mom, he started, hands raised. Let's not escalate this. We can. Mitchell stepped forward and handed him an envelope. This is notice of pending investigation into financial coercion, unlawful asset conversion, and property misrepresentation. Your presence here is no longer legally protected. Mark scanned the letter like it was written in another language. You're actually doing this? He asked, staring at me now. After everything? I met his eyes. No yelling, I said. No threats, no tricks, just truth. You're overreacting. I took one slow step forward. My feet knew these floors, the slight creak in the 3rd board near the hallway, the warmth of the sun through the south window. This is my home, I said, and you tried to take it with a pen and a smile. Officer Simmons turned to Chloe and her friends. You'll need to begin collecting your belongings now, quietly. One of them looked at me, eyes wide. We didn't know, she said. She always says, I replied gently. They backed away. One even whispered a quick sorry as she grabbed her purse and slipped out the front door. Chloe stood frozen, her cheeks blotchy, phone in her hand like it could save her. This is humiliating, she muttered. No, I said. This is consequence. Mark's shoulders sagged. The bluff had broken. And me? I walked past them all. Into my kitchen, ran my fingers across the countertop, picked up the tea kettle I used every morning for 40 years. It was still warm. I opened the back door and stepped into the garden. My roses, unwatered but stubborn, were still standing. I crouched, tugged a weed from the soil, and let the silence wrap around me. No shouting, no breakdown, just a woman, back in her place, reclaiming the dirt her family had tried to pave over. It only took 3 more days for the court to make it official. Mark was served with a formal notice. He was to vacate the property within 48 hours due to active investigation of elder financial abuse, with pending fraud charges still under review. No contact, no access, no return. Mitchell brought me the document personally, standing in my now clean kitchen with that same professional steadiness I had come to trust. It's done, he said, sliding the folder across the counter. I opened it. Read the words carefully. Let them settle. He was no longer a resident here. Not by law, not by lie. I stepped outside into the garden while Mitchell made a few last calls. The backyard was quieter than I remembered. The hydrangeas hadn't bloomed this year. The soil had hardened in spots. But my rose bushes? Still there. Still trying. That's when I heard the door slam upstairs. Then yelling. Not mine. Mark, what do you mean we have to go? Chloe's voice cracked through the open window like a tantrum dressed in desperation. You told me this was handled. You promised me. I didn't think she'd actually file anything, he yelled back. You don't understand. She didn't used to be like this. Like what? She shouted. Smart? I almost smiled. For once, Chloe said something honest. Officer Simmons arrived just before sunset. Same calm voice. Same steady posture. Mr. Holloway, he said at the door. You've had time to gather your belongings. We'll escort you off the premises now. Mark stood there in the doorway, half-packed duffel in one hand, resentment in the other. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller somehow. I can't believe you're really doing this, he said to me, kicking your own son out. No, I replied. I'm protecting the woman you stopped seeing as your mother the moment she became your opportunity. Behind him, Chloe was crying. Real or not, I couldn't say. But when Mark stepped out onto the porch, she didn't follow. She stood in the hallway like a girl left behind at a train station, mascara smudged, her phone still in her hand like someone was going to call with a better ending. Officer Simmons nodded at me. It's yours now, Mrs. Holloway. I didn't nod back. I didn't need to. I turned and walked through the house, room by room. My steps echoed against the floor she'd planned to rip up. My fingers brushed the hallway paint they called outdated. And when I got back to the garden, I knelt, right there by the roses, pulled on my gloves, dug in with my bare hands anyway. The soil was dry, uncared for, tired, but not ruined, never ruined. As I worked, I heard the car engine start, tires roll off the gravel. No words, no goodbyes, just the sound of an exit they thought would never come. I looked down at my gloves, streaked with earth. This was my ground, and I was taking it back one handful at a time. The courthouse was colder than I expected. Not in temperature, but in tone. The kind of sterile stillness that makes people whisper, even when they're angry. I didn't whisper. I sat in the front row, just behind my attorney, hands folded in my lap. I wore Clifford's old navy cardigan, not because it matched anything, but because it reminded me who I was doing this for him, for me. Mark entered 20 minutes late, looking like someone who hadn't slept. Chloe followed, eyes red, face bare. No filters, no followers here. They didn't look at me. I didn't need them to. The judge, an older woman named Henderson, wasted no time. She reviewed the docket, confirmed the motion for formal injunction enforcement, and preliminary hearing on abuse-based property manipulation. Mark's lawyer stood. He tried to paint a picture. Mr. Holloway was simply attempting to help his mother with daily responsibilities. He took initiative in assisting with bills, coordinating property upkeep, and supporting his daughter during a transitional period. The judge raised an eyebrow. And this assistance included changing the locks without notice and redirecting bank funds? Mark's lawyer stammered. There was a miscommunication. 17 unauthorized transfers is not a miscommunication, Mitchell said, standing now, voice calm and sharp like a clean scalpel. That's a pattern. Your Honor, I said, rising. May I speak? Judge Henderson nodded. Briefly. I looked at Mark first, then Chloe, then back to the judge. I didn't come here for revenge, I said. I came here for restoration. Mark shifted in his seat. I gave my son a home when his life fell apart. I welcomed his daughter when she needed space. I believed their promises. I trusted their intentions. But what I received in return was isolation, manipulation, and eventually, violence. I didn't tremble when I said that last word. I wanted the court to hear it, to feel it. I didn't yell. I didn't retaliate. I documented. I reported. I protected myself the only way I knew how. Quietly. Legally. Thoroughly. The courtroom was silent. Chloe looked down at her lap. Mark didn't blink. The judge tapped her pen once, then spoke. This court finds sufficient evidence to uphold the injunction and move forward with a protective estate reassignment. Effective immediately, Ms. Evelyn Holloway retains full control of her property, finances, and legal authority. Any previous claims or shared accesses are hereby revoked. Mark's lawyer opened his mouth. Judge Henderson didn't look up. Mr. Wallace, I suggest your client focus on compliance, because if this proceeds to criminal review, we will not be dealing with property anymore. We will be dealing with fraud. And just like that, it was over. No tears. No last-minute declarations. Just truth, stated cleanly, written into record, and signed into law. As I stepped out of that courtroom, the sun hit my face like a blessing. Louisa was waiting on the bench outside, thermos in hand. "Well?" she asked. "It's done." She handed me the tea, still warm. "Then let's go home." I smiled, not because I won, but because I remembered what it meant to walk forward with nothing to hide and nothing left to prove. It arrived 2 weeks after the court ruling. A pale pink envelope with loopy handwriting and 3 heart stickers on the back. No return address, but I recognized it before I even opened it. Chloe. I sat at the kitchen table, hands clean from gardening, the kettle still warming on the stove. The envelope felt weightless, like it couldn't possibly carry the things I knew it wanted to say. But I opened it anyway, because I needed to see it for myself. Inside was 2 pages of notebook paper, torn from the spiral, edges still frayed. "Grams, I know I probably don't deserve you reading this, but I had to try. I didn't know everything. I really didn't. I just thought I was finally going to have a place that felt safe, that felt like home. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't realize how far things had gone until it was too late. Dad told me everything was okay. He said you were fine with it, that you'd agreed. I guess I believed what I wanted to hear. I miss how things used to be. When you used to bake with me. When we'd watch those boring old cooking shows and you'd pretend to fall asleep just to get out of doing dishes. I don't know if you can ever forgive me. But I'm sorry, I truly am. Love, Chloe." I read it once, then again. The handwriting trembled in places, like maybe she really had cried. But I didn't feel tears. I felt hollow. Because nowhere in that letter did she ask how I was. Nowhere did she acknowledge the lock on the door I couldn't open, the slap I didn't report, the way she walked through my hallway with entitlement in her eyes and her phone up, filming her future on the ashes of my past. She missed how things used to be? So did I. Back when I thought love from family came with respect, back when I thought being kind didn't make you a target, I stood up, walked to the corner of the study, and opened the shredder's lid. It was quiet, mechanical, just a low, hungry hum. I slid the letter in 1 line at a time. Chloe's words became ribbons. "Some people only apologize when the benefits run out," Louisa had said once. She was right. That letter wasn't a bridge. It was bait. One last soft voice before another ask. I didn't need that voice anymore. I needed silence, and I finally had it. Outside, the roses were blooming again, fuller now, almost smug in their survival. I poured myself a cup of tea and stared out the kitchen window. No noise, no footsteps overhead, no strangers measuring walls. Just birdsong and the gentle creak of the old swing Clifford built. I thought I'd feel guilt, but instead, I felt peace. Not because Chloe was gone, not because Mark had lost, but because I had chosen me. In the guest bedroom, I opened the cedar chest at the foot of the bed. Inside, my wedding veil, faded and brittle. A stack of letters tied with ribbon, Clifford's handwriting, full of dry jokes and grocery lists, disguised as love notes. The sweater Chloe wore in her kindergarten photo. She'd been so small then, so sweet. I left it all untouched, just closed the lid again and sat on the edge of the bed for a while. Not crying, just remembering. Then I went to the dining room. It used to be the heart of the house. Thanksgiving dinners, Birthday candles. Laughter echoing against old wallpaper. It had been years since the table was set for more than one. I sat down at the head of it, took out my pen, and opened the manila folder marked New Will. Mitchell had sent the draft weeks ago, just in case. All I had to do was fill in the blanks, so I did. I left nothing to Mark. Not a dime, not a chair, not a photograph. And Chloe? No property, no access, no inheritance. Instead, I left everything, to a scholarship fund I'd quietly established through the church. One designed specifically for young women with no family support. Girls who aged out of the foster system, who wanted to study horticulture or culinary arts or anything that brought them peace. Girls who knew what it meant to be ignored and still bloom anyway. I signed the will, dated it, slipped it into a fireproof lockbox beside my notebook, the same one that carried every receipt, every betrayal, every quiet wound I never once screamed about. And I felt whole, because this time I chose the ending. I chose where the legacy went, not to people who called me weak behind my back, not to ones who mistook silence for surrender, but to futures worth planting into. That night, I walked out into the yard. The moon hung low, casting silver over the garden. I knelt beside the roses again, only this time, not to bury something, to replant. I moved 3 of them, cuttings I'd been nursing in quiet corners of the yard, to the front flower bed, where everyone passing by would see them, bold, bright, unhidden, just like me now.